We're back with Bernard Murray, and it is July, what is it, today? It's the 10th. 10th, 2014. What were you doing in the what were you doing in the army in Algeria?
Well, that was not my choice.
In 1959 through 62?
61.
61, so there was an Algerian...
July 1959, November 1961.
Well, the Algerians gave the French government some trouble at some point, didn't they?
Well, yes, and I was drafted. Very, very good question, and I will tell you why.
I'm looking for bullet holes. I'm not sure I see any, but I mean...
Well, when you spend 16 hours in the basement, like I did on June 6th, from 2 o'clock in the morning until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you are not very comfortable in a dark room. So when I was drafted in the combat engineers, and we were either going to cavern to find the rebel or everything, or take care of mines. I choose mine, because I say I want to die by seeing the sky.
Mines on the beach?
No, mines in the desert and everything. And my Jeep roll on what's happened in Iraq and Afghanistan,
yes.
But they were not with cell phone and everything. There was a case, a wooden case, full of TNT, right. And with a detonator. And if they roll and we don't see that. Anyhow, I was drafted, and Algeria was, logically, we should have never had this war, because if you know the map...
It's huge, by the way. Algeria is huge.
Yeah, well, especially in the south. But again, like I say in our first interview, economical, political, that was because we had oil in the Sahara.
Sure.
But Algeria is on the middle, with on the west Morocco, on the east Tunisia. And we gave the independence to these two guys. And we kept Algeria and say, oh, no, Algeria, we you since 1830, you are part of France, and you are a French département.
And they probably didn't have any representation.
No, and that was crazy.
Okay.
We knew, and De Gaulle knew that after 1 year, after 68, when he came to power. I mean, before 68, he said, no, we need to give the independence. It's crazy to keep that like that. And it was an experience. So I know what it is to have a uniform and even being blown up by your mind. And
I wonder, having seen some of the World War II films and what you just mentioned, I wonder how many tens of thousands of mines are still in the desert that have not been swept. When you consider all of Rommel's campaigns and Montgomery coming back, and
the French
back and forth there,
and the French with the African Corps.
Were they properly swept here in the
last well, it's one thing that I will tell you, is that we have not been able, from 1944 to until 1951, to go on the beaches of Normandy. And still...
Oh, really?
Yeah, and still today, we still found something sometime.
Oh, yeah. I can imagine. You mean unexploded ordnance?
Less and less that. But
how about farmers in the... farmers dig up stuff all the time, probably.
Oh yeah.
How do they keep it from 88 shells blowing them up?
Well, first of all, as soon as they see something, and guess what? In the east side of France, World War I.
Oh yeah.
So Verdun, Colmar,
all along
Nancy, yeah, you find still things. First of all, the law has been that anyone who finds something who looks like a military stuff cannot touch it, need to put a white flag or whatever at the place and call la gendarmerie or the police or whatever of the village.
So it's, and And this is a question I've always wondered. How did the French, I realize the relationship with the French and the Germans, you know, the conflict during World War I and World War II, obviously there's some really, really hard feelings there. But how about with respect to the people of Luxembourg? We're pretty much caught in the middle. Were they German sympathizers, or were they more French, or were they half and half? I mean, they didn't really have any choice in this. They tried to remain neutral, didn't they?
First of all, you forgot the Third War, 1870.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry.
With the Germans.
Yeah.
But
Didn't want to show my lack of historical knowledge here. I just lost something else. Okay.
But guess what? We have more war with the British than with the Germans.
Oh, yeah.
But anyhow.
By the way, thanks for showing up at Yorktown. We appreciate it.
Well,
you know there is Lafayette Square. It's not Marie Square. It's Lafayette,
Lafayette Square.
We are still very appreciative.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, by the way, when you mentioned that, it bothered me a little bit when I looked out at the crowd and you started talking about the French fleet showing up. There were too many blank faces out there. Okay, you don't have to be have a doctorate in history to know that you guys showed up, and Cornwallis just said, "Okay, I've had it." But if I had the feeling, many people in the audience had no idea what you were referring to. That bothered me a little bit.
Well, if you want really to be bothered, I have heard many times that when I talk about World War II, somebody say, "Oh yeah, I know, we were with the German against the Russian."
Yeah. Well, General Patton was ready to kick them out of Vienna and take on the Russians, as you recall, and that didn't happen. But
well, that's a long story.
And the Germans wanted to join with Patton, don't you recall? At one point,
For
that
sure.
was a ridiculous
For sure.
idea. But
For sure.
Okay.
And for one good reason, it was that the Russians were not very welcome. But many people say that the Russians were tough with the Germans, but they don't realize how many tough the Germans were with the Russian people. They lost several million.
That's correct.
Okay, and when we had the scandal at Bedford because of the buste of Stalin, and people didn't want that because he's a dictator, I jumped through the roof and I said, "Wait a minute, it's not 23 Bedford boys that you will have lost. It's everyone." He was our ally, and he was making several million Germans busy on the eastward. And without him, I can assure you, we will not have the success that we had on Normandy or elsewhere, because the whole German will have been there.
One of my favorite books, perhaps my favorite book, is The Siege of Leningrad, 900 Days. Yeah. Have you read it? Harrison Salisbury. I give it to all of my children and anybody who cares to read about the Russian sacrifices during World War II, especially in Leningrad. And I told them, and still do today, that I want you to read it, but I would appreciate it if you would read it in July or August, because if you read it in November, December, or January, you'll get a chill that'll never leave your body.
Yeah, that's true.
But how about back to Luxembourg? What were they half and half? I mean, half of
no,
half
Luxembourg,
of them speak French and half of them speak German.
Well, Luxembourg is more toward the French than to the Germans. Now, where we had a big problem is with Alsace.
Okay.
Because
you took it back from Germany and wouldn't give it back.
They have been German, French, 3 times.
How about Lorraine?
Well, the same thing.
Alsace-Lorraine. Okay.
3 times. And like say one of my uncle, we cannot trust them. And on the top of that, they speak German.
You mean then?
Alsace, yeah. Well, I mean, you have some family in Alsace who one of the members of the family was in the German army and the other one was in the French resistance.
That's an interesting...
And matter of fact, this particular family that my family knows, the one in the German army deserted and joined the French resistance. But they were forced. They were forced to go in the German army, the young kid of Alsace. So that was the biggest problem. Now, the people who couldn't stand the German even more than the French, that was the Dutch, Netherlands.
Well, they starved them to death there at the end, and it was a problem. Now I have a very important question that's going to make YouTube history. I want to know, when are you guys going to fix Fontainebleau? When are you going to get Fontainebleau completely restored?
I have no idea. You have
There are birds flying in the upper rooms on the left side of Fontainebleau. I've been to Avon and done this, and it's beautiful, the parts that you fixed, but you won't fix the rest of it.
But I will tell you one thing that we have finally get money for is the famous monument of l'Escadrille Lafayette, which was a American group of fighter plane, l'Escadrille Lafayette,
Okay.
and who has a monument outside of Paris, who nobody took care, like some of the cemetery of World War I, by the way. And that was at Marne-la-Coquette, which is a small village outside of Paris, where we used to live when we came back and we buy a house. And my father was the mayor, and that was where Eisenhower, when he was the supreme headquarters Allied power in Europe, was as his residence, which gave me the opportunity to meet him. And that's where I heard from him directly to me when I was about 14 years old. Without people like your father, we will have not been successful.
This has been very enjoyable.
Thank you,
Very enjoyable.
Thank
And I
you.
look forward to seeing you on the TGV one of these days.
With pleasure.
Thank you very much for joining us.
The ocean TGV, the Atlantic one, will take you to Caen.
Look forward to it. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Bye now.